Hello and welcome to Salty Works Designs. My name is Jenny and today I'm going to be making the Ember CrossBody. This bag is great for beginners. I think the pattern worked very well. I liked the fact that there's no binding in this one. It's got pockets, plenty of pockets. It'll hold everything you need. So this is the Ember. And I used wax canvas. I really like that distressed look. So this is the front of the bag, and I like this nice zipper here. So we got a nice deep pocket that goes almost to the other side. Well, it does go to the other side. You have a nice pocket in the back. This is with a magnetic snap. Again, a nice deep pocket. I like the recessed zipper, and it opens wide for this one, which if you're anything like me, I like the ones that open wide because I can get a lot in and out of it. So then it's going to be hard to see, but here we have a zipper pocket. Which is a pretty decent size, deep one. And then we have a large divider pocket. And you could, if you wanted to, you could turn around and make that into two pockets if you wanted to. I just made it as one big, probably would fit probably an iPad or a small notebook. And then of course we have the nice deep inside pocket. I made a crossbody strap. You can see it's a nice size. Carry quite a bit for, if you have to, you're working, you can put plenty of stuff in it, or if you're on vacation. I like this pocket because it's going to be very easily able to get into that. And I like the fact that we have the metal snap on the back one, so you can put things in there and it's not going to fall out. It'll be nice and secure. So thank you for coming and checking out my video. This is my first video. Hopefully it goes well and you enjoy it. If you do, please like and subscribe, and let's get started. Let's start out by looking at all the fabric you're going to need and also all the hard wire. I'm going to show you the hard wire first. Bear with me here as I adjust my camera. What I have here is, it calls for 8mm rivets. I've only got 7, so we're going to use the 7s. You're going to need 8 of those. You need 1 magnetic snap, both the male and the female end. Hopefully I will not lose my ends. You're gonna need 2 1.5-inch D-rings. I like to use the rainbow hardware in almost all my bags. This kind of become my signature. You're gonna need 1 belt adjuster at 1.5. You're going to need your webbing. You can use already pre-made webbing like I'm gonna do. This is 1.5. You can also use plain old webbing like this, still 1.5, or you can even make your crossbody strap with your fabric. You're also going to need 4 zippers. I usually use rainbow zippers, but I'm not really digging the zipper ends that I have right now, so I'm going to use the metal. I'm also going to be using a handmade rainbow tag. And then you're also going to need your number 5 zipper tape. I prefer zipper tape. It's just easier for me because I can buy it in bulk instead of just buying individual sizes. I can cut it to whatever length I want. So for me, this is just what I prefer. Okay, let's get started. The first 2 pieces you're going to need are pattern piece A, which is your exterior. Again, I'm using wax canvas, and you're going to need piece E1, which is your exterior zipper pocket facing. And again, I'm using the wax canvas. Okay, so what you have to do is you need to transfer this zipper alignment to your fabric. For me, I use wax canvas, so I just use one of my style, I don't know what these are called, whatever, the stilettos or whatever they are, and I can just mark my canvas with a line that tells me where I need to set it. So then I like to keep my two pieces together briefly to line up the line. And then I'm just going to clip it in place. I'm not going to use any pins in my wax canvas because I just don't like the way it looks. Can leave little holes, and I don't like that. Okay. So an easy way to do this is to actually cut this window out, which is exactly what I'm going to do. You don't have to cut it out. If you choose not to cut it out, what you want to do is line up the line that's on here, and then also so your line here, and then 3/4 of an inch in. That way you know where to curve it. For me, I just find it easier. I then go ahead and put it back on my piece, and then I use my stiletto to just mark it on my fabric. Then I don't have to worry about being off at all. So I'm just gonna take my stiletto. Please correct me if I'm wrong on what it's called, because I probably am wrong. Okay, so then when I take this off, I can now see, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see my line here that I'll go ahead and sew around. You're gonna sew around that line, right on that line, and then when we come back, we will go ahead and trim it up. Give me a minute, and I'm going to transition to my other sewing machine. Okay, so for me, I have two different sewing machines. This one is my Baby Lock Accomplish. It is a pretty tough sewing machine. It can sew through almost anything. I've never not been able to sew through a material. So I use this one when I'm doing my bag work and stuff. I do also have a Baby Lock Jubilant. I use that one mostly for piecing, or if I'm just working with regular fabric. Okay. So again, we're at the sewing machine, so we're just going to sew along this line. Take your time so you get the curve good. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Here, so I'm just gonna do another little bit to fix this. I'm gonna cut some of it off anyways. Okay, so I've got my line all sewn up. So now we'll go back over and I will show you the next step. Okay, let's go ahead and keep going. So I like to use my pinking shears when I'm cutting anything, especially when I'm around a curve, because it just seems to sit better. So what I'm going to do is just cut on it's close, but not cutting over my sewn line. And we're just cutting out this window. because that's where our zipper is eventually going to end up. Okay. So as you can see, we have our nice little window. Don't forget to cut your thread, or you're going to have thread to cut like crazy as you get to the end. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to take this piece and fold it. Make sure you bring out these corner pieces that kind of stick out a little bit here, because you're going to need those. So do your best to push them down and out so they line up really nicely. I cannot iron my wax canvas, so I am just going to use some pins once I get the pieces lined up as I go. Okay. And then I'm just going to press the rest around there. Okay. Now we're going to set this aside. Do not top stitch. Okay. So next what you're going to need is your E2 exterior zipper pocket. Okay. And you're going to need a zipper. Again, I just use zipper tape. You can follow the measurements in the pattern, but I tend to just cut it and I can trim it down later if I need to. If you're using zipper tape, please be sure to melt the ends of the zipper so they don't fray. Okay. And then we're going to put our zipper pull on. You don't have to put your zipper pull on right away. I just choose to put it on just because I don't have to fight with it later, because I have enough problems with the zippers. I remember the first time I was doing a zipper and I got so frustrated that I ended up throwing it across the room, which was not a good thing. Okay, so what you need to do now is you're going to take your E2 piece, which is your lining pocket, right side facing up. You're going to pin the zipper also right side facing up along the right side. So you're going to go here, because what will eventually happen is you want your zipper to open on the top, from the top down, because we're going to be flipping this. Okay. So we're going to start off by lining up the two edges. So it's fabric lining right side up, zipper facing right side up. And when you have the zipper to your right, it should be facing up. Your zipper should be facing up. So you're going to stitch along this, and they want you to do this at 1/4 inch. Okay, so zipper pull is at the top, 1/4 inch. We'll go to the sewing machine. Okay, I think I missed sewing a step for you guys. So I did the zipper, I attached it, did it at the 1/4 inch, and then I went an extra step and I went and sewed down the flap to the lining so it doesn't get in my way when I go to attach it. I think I missed hitting record. Very sorry about that. So now what you want to do is you want to turn your piece so the zipper is now to the left. This will make it easier to follow the next steps. So now what you want to do is grab your piece that you already did, piece A, and now we're going to line up the zipper. One thing that you can do with the zipper too, if you're afraid that it's going to open and close on you or come off, you can take and stitch a couple times over the teeth, and that'll make sure that it holds it in. Perfectly okay to do that. I just don't do that, and I just clipped it to the wrong side. Okay. Make sure you're using the right side. So this is the back, this is the front. So I want the front to line up here. And I'm just gonna clip it in place. Keeping my zipper out of the way because you don't want to break your... Now, one of the things that would be really easier, a lot easier to do, it doesn't work very well with wax canvas, so that's why I don't really use it much, is you could put double-sided tape to hold the zipper in place. But again, I don't do that because it doesn't really stick very well anyways. So now what we're going to do is take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to just stitch an with a 1/8 seam allowance. It's basically just holding this in place, okay? Okay, so now you're at your sewing machine and you're only doing around the original curve that we first did. And again, only at 1/8 of an inch. So basically it's just enough to cover it up. Keep it attached to your panel and your zipper. Take your time so you get nice around the curves. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. And don't forget to move your zipper out of the way as you go so you don't catch that in your needle, because that will break your needle, of course. We all have probably done that a few times. Okay, so that's what that looks like. So it's now all nice and sewn. It's not going anywhere. So now we can work on the rest of the pocket. Okay, we can work on the next piece. However, I did make a mistake, but I am not going to rip it out and start over. I oriented my pocket the wrong way. I oriented my pocket this way, and it should have been this way. So it should have gone, so it should have actually been longer. I'm just gonna leave mine the way it is and go from there. So what you wanna do now is you take your second E2 pocket and lay it right side up. And then I like to turn it over, and I'm going to line it up as best as I can with the panel because I made a mistake. And I'm just going to clip it along the top. So when I do this, I am going across the top at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can see it's there, and you're just gonna go across the top at a 1/4 of an inch. That's where we're gonna start. Okay. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Sometimes I forget that part. And then I'm just gonna move my zipper out of the way so I don't catch it. Okay, so now that is nice and secure. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these back because I don't want to catch the actual outer piece. I just want to catch the 2 lining pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew down each side. Making sure that you keep the outer panel out of the way. Do the same on the other side. Even though mine are a little off, I'll trim them up since I made a mistake. But for now, I'm just going with it. Just make sure you get this piece out of the way so you don't close the actual lining and the actual outer piece. because I messed up before I do the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and just trim this off. If I would have put the piece on correctly, I would have only have had to trim a little off the bottom. But now I have to do both. My pocket will just be a little smaller than the actual pattern calls for, but mistakes happen and I just kind of go with them sometimes. So then let's go ahead. You know what? I don't think I closed this off. I think we pull the bag through this pocket. Yeah, I don't think I do that part. So we'll go back and start the next part. Okay, so my outside pocket is all done. As you can see, it's all nice in there. We do not clip the top, I'm in the bottom yet. And we're gonna go ahead and close that zipper up. Please don't mind my pocket being off a little bit because I messed up. Mine looks a little funky, but that's okay. Before I move on any farther, I think this is a good place where I'm going to put on one of my tags. And I don't have a tag with my specific like design on it or anything. I know a lot of people do, I just haven't done that. So I just use these rainbow and it just says handmade on it. Okay, so what I want to do before I start this is I want to find my center. Again, I just crease mine because of the wax canvas. You can mark it however you want to. And now I'm just going to, I don't remember how big this panel is. So this panel is 9. So I think I'm gonna attach mine at about the 4 or maybe even the 3 so it's closer to the zipper. Nope, that would be wrong because I'm going to need to do it from this side. Because this, I keep forgetting the orientation of the pocket is the side pocket and not a, okay. So this is 11. I think I'm gonna do it at about the 4 still. So for mine, I just have a little piece. I'm gonna put mine about right here. Try and make it as even as I can. I'm not always the best at judging whether or not something's straight or not. You don't want to move your pocket out of the way because you don't want to cut through your pocket. And then I just use an X-Acto knife and I just line it up, make sure it's where I want it, and then I just slit through it. And then I just go ahead and push my tag through. Okay. Sometimes I do them out, sometimes I do them in. I kind of like with this big one to do it in. And then I'm going to take a piece of fabric. I just always have extra pieces around here. And because again I can't sew, normally I would put just put fusible fleece over it of some kind, but I can't do that. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of fabric glue. Sorry, that's a little much, but for some reason, even though it's not clogged, I can't get it to come out of the top. And then I'm just going to put this over it. I don't quite need it that big. No one's gonna see this. This is just strictly to protect the fabric. Okay. See, you won't even notice it. And then there is my cute little tag. Okay. That'll have time to dry. Okay, I'm gonna get set up for the next part and I'll be right back. Okay, the next thing you're gonna need is your pattern B, which is your exterior side. You have 4 of them, but for now we only need 2. I'm gonna start on the zipper side and I'm just going to attach this to my panel. Remember when you're doing this side that your zipper will get in the way, so you want to make sure that you're making sure it's out of your seam. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and attach the other side right away. Again, I just like to pin it because I have to transition over to my other machine. Just make sure everything's lined up nicely. And then you're just gonna sew down each side using the seam allowance that is in the pattern. Okay, now we're just gonna sew using the seam allowance that's listed in the pattern down both sides, making sure you back stitch. Make sure you're careful when you're doing the other side where the zipper is, so you don't get your zipper caught. You probably have to move it down as you go. Usually it moves pretty easily, but okay, now you're just going to press these open. Because I'm using wax canvas, it's pretty easy to just press it. If you have to, you can go ahead and iron it, but with wax canvas you don't really have to do that, thankfully. Okay, and then you're just going to top stitch at a 1-inch seam allowance right on the seam. Zipper out of the way. Okay, I'm just going to do the other side. Here we go. Our front piece is coming together. Okay, since this is all set for now, we're just going to go ahead and set it aside. And now you're going to need to grab pieces C1, which is the back top exterior, and C2, which is the exterior center back bottom, which is this. I am using my fabric because I wanted a little bit kind of a pop of something different, so I'm doing that. And then let's go ahead and grab C1. The first thing you want to do is mark the center on this because we're going to work on where we're going to put the snap. Okay. Okay. Now there is a little mark here that shows where your placement goes. This is going to be your snap placement for the female end. And then what I like to do is I'm just going to grab one of my washers. Just one of my little washers. And before I do that, I'm going to use my stiletto to mark it on my wax canvas so I know where it goes. It's always a good idea with this is to put some kind of backing on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to glue a little piece on here, just right on the back, and give it time to dry. I still don't think it's going to work, and it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know what, I'll take a little bit on my stick here, since it doesn't want to work. Okay. I'm just gonna put it here where the mark is. And that'll just help protect the fabric when we put the snap on. So now what I'll do is I'll just put my washer here and center it up on the X that I made. And you can either mark it and then come back and cut. I just choose to do it all at once. So I'm just gonna cut through my canvas and the interfacing I used. Okay, but I'm not attaching it yet. Oops. Piece came off. Okay, so now what we need to do is we're going to take C2 and we're doing right sides together. This won't stick. Okay, I'll take care of that later. So what we're going to do is just line these bottom edges up. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and make sure they're lined up good. And then we're just going to go ahead and sew these with the called for seam allowance. So we have that attached. Okay, once you have that seam sewed, you're going to butterfly this seam open, pressing in as best as you can. Okay. And then you're going to top stitch down each side of the seam. The other side. There we go. So that piece is done. Now we can go ahead and install our snap and move on to the next part. Okay, so let's go ahead and attach our magnetic snap. And for this side, you need the female end. So you've already got your holes there, so you're gonna go ahead and push that through. I'm gonna try this again. Gonna do one stick, but that's okay. I'm just gonna push this over so it goes over in the prongs. And then for this one, I like to open them up. So I just open these up like that. So now I've got the female end of my snap attached. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside for a minute. And now you need to grab pieces D1 and D2. Okay. So your D1 and D2, your D1 is the exterior slip pocket, it's the outside, so that is my wax canvas. And then my D2 is the inside of my slip pocket, so I just used my normal material. And then one of these gets your snap. Okay. So on your exterior slip pocket, the inside D, we need to put we're gonna put the next part of our snap on. Okay. I'm actually gonna do it on the back so I can mark with my fabric pen. As you can see, I just put my little mark there, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. Get that out of the way. And I'm just going to make my slits for, actually this one I think I'll just mark. Okay. Make sure it went through. I think it did. There we go. There. Okay. Let's see what's next. Okay. Now that we've marked our snap, make sure you take and put the snap at the top. Make sure you're watching your orientation. So remember, the pieces are always in orientation. So this one's up, and D is up like this. So we're gonna put the top up here, but we're doing right sides together. Okay, so you're gonna clip the top. And then we'll go and stitch across the top. And then we will top stitch, and we can also put in our snap. Okay, so now we're just gonna stitch across the top. Now you can turn it over. Do your best to get your seams lined up so you get that nice crisp edge. working with wax canvas, I can't iron, so I'm just going to line them up and then pin. Well, not pin, I'm gonna clip. Making sure I've got that nice edge all the way down. Okay. Now I'm just gonna top stitch. Okay, so now we got that nice clean edge. So now we can go ahead and put in our snap. Push it through. Again, I'm going to put in a piece of, oops. Again, I like to go out with my snaps. Okay. So now we have the male end of our snap. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, I had made a mistake. This is where it's important to make sure you're orientating your patterns correctly. I actually orientated it upside down when I put it together, so I had to move my snap back down because if I went down, my pieces are not lining up. So now I put my snaps together. Okay. And then what we're going to do is lift this piece up. And we're going to close up this bottom of this pocket. So we're just going to sew across here. So let's go to the machine and do that. And then we're also going to attach the back B pieces, just like we did with the front panel. Okay, so we're going to flip that up and we're just going to sew down the bottom of this pocket. So we have our pocket all sewn up. Now when we look at this, you can see the pocket started here, but we're not doing anything on the side yet because we're just going to do it at the same time we put B on. Let me grab a few clips here. Okay, so now you're going to take your B's and you're going to attach them just like you did on the front, lining them up. Doing your best to line up all the edges so you get that nice crisp look. Okay. And then I'm going to just attach the second one right away just so it's done. And you're going to use your seam allowance and stitch these in place. Whoops. And I hit something and caused my needle to fall out. Didn't break though, just fell out. Put this back in. Sometimes I found with my machine what happens is it seems to just eventually loosen itself up, especially when I'm stopping and going on it. Okay, let's try that again. Sorry about that. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm still going to put a couple clips here. Okay. And now I think I ran out of bobbin. Sure did. I'll be right back. Okay. I can go back and finish this now. Give me 1 second to catch back up. Okay. And then just like before, you're going to press your seams open. And go ahead and top stitch. On the other side. Okay, now you got your nice slip pocket. It's a pretty roomy slip pocket too, and normally they're not that roomy, but that one's a nice one. Okay. Okay. So now that we got these 2 panels done, what we are going to do now is with your pattern pieces, you got this little box corner template. You can just measure it if you want, or you can just put it on the corner. And for me, because of my wax canvas, I'm just going to use my owl. And mark where I'm going to cut out. You're going to do this on the front and your back panel. And then we're just gonna cut these little squares out. That's gonna help us give us really nice corners when we start putting this together. I love the corners that we get when we do this method. There we go. Okay, so now it's time to start putting the pieces together. So first thing we're going to do is line up the bottoms. Bottoms are a little off. It's okay though, it'll all work out. I must have got my seam allowance a little off, but usually these bottoms are usually pretty forgiving. So now what you're going to do is go to your sewing machine and sew your seam allowance only on the bottom. Okay. So we're just going to sew the bottom with the seam allowance. Now for my next step, the pattern doesn't call for it, but I just like the extra added security it gives me that, you know, my stitchings are going to stay and it's going to be nice and reinforced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to butterfly up my seams open again. Again, you don't have to do this step. It's just something I prefer to do because I want to make sure that whoever might end up buying my bag, or if I end up using the bag, I have a little added protection. So I am just going to sew on each side of the seam just to reinforce it a little bit. And I'm going to do the other side the same way. Mistake I just did and go too fast over some of the stronger seams, because then your stitching is all wonky. One thing about me when I'm sewing is I don't expect anything that I do to be extremely perfect, and the reason for that is if it's perfect, then it looks like it came from a machine factory and it's just been mass produced. I look at my flaws and mistakes as just another piece of me and my bags, and they're all made out of love. So I make mistakes, but I just keep going. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So we just got finished putting the two outside pieces together. So now what you need to do is grab your piece F, which is your exterior base. So I ran out of my fusible foam and my stabilizer. So what I'm going to do is just use a heavy duty interfacing. Since I'm usually wax canvas anyways, I'll still have the structure I need without having to have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue this down, and then I'm going to show you how to wrap it. Okay, so you want to center this piece, foam or interfacing or stabilizer, whatever you're using. Like I said, I don't have any of the firm stabilizer, so I'm just going to use my heavy. I need to order some new glue because this is not very helpful here. Is anyone else a hot mess in their sewing room like I am? Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and center this right on your exterior F base. And then I'm going to go ahead, double-sided tape doesn't work always great with wax canvas, but I'm going to give it a try just to at least get us started here. And I'm going to stick this down across the long sides, because those are the sides we're going to be turning in. These are the times where my fake nails get in the way. There we go. And then you're just going to fold this to the edge. Try and get it as neat as you can, because this is on the exterior of the bag. Do the same thing on the other side. Sorry, my fingernails just make it a little bit more difficult. There we go. Okay, and you're going to go ahead and do the same thing on this end. Okay, so now we got a heavier piece for our base, just to kind of give this base a little extra oomph to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to go back to the exterior piece we already did, and then this piece should fit right over that seam, right in between the two pieces. So that's going to give it the strength. So let me go ahead and turn you guys around, and we will sew that in pace. Sorry, I have to keep shifting, but my husband is going to install a swivel arm for me tomorrow. Okay. So at your sewing machine, you're just going to go ahead. I'm going to put a couple clips on each side just to make sure I'm centered up well. Okay. And I'm just going to put the center right over the existing seams we already sewed. Okay. just gonna go ahead and sew up both sides. Well, actually all around on 4 sides, I should say. This is where our seams start to get a little bulky, so if your machine is struggling, just try and slow down a little bit. And this is where choosing the right fabric will be helpful. Now we have this reinforced bag bottom. So when we put the corners together and do all of that, that's going to give us a nice bag structure. Okay, let's start putting the outside of this bag together. So now with your right sides facing inside, we're going to start connecting this bag. So you're just going to pin your sides. I tend to put more clips than I probably need to, but that's just because it helps me slow down when I am sewing. So we're only doing this edge. We're not doing anything with the cutout at this point. Go ahead and line up the other side. Then you're just going to go to your machine and sew it at the allotted seam allowance. Also going to get the next step ready to go. Okay, let me turn you guys again so you guys can see me in the sewing machine. Okay. So now all you're going to do is sew down each side with the allotted seam allowance. Make sure everything stays lined up. Side, same thing, using the seam allowance. So now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and butterfly your seams open, so that way we can then do your box corners. So I'm going to go ahead and press these open. If you're using something that you can iron, feel free to go ahead and iron them open. I'm using wax canvas, so I'm not going to do that. So now let's go ahead and make our corners. So I'm going to turn you guys down a little bit. So you have the seam on the bottom and you have the seam that we just opened, and you want to line them up. You should be able to feel that they're lined up. And then I just like to put a couple clips just to hold it in place while I prepare both sides. So again, I'm going to take my corner here and line up the back seam with it, making sure that I can feel that they're lined up. And then again, I'm just going to put a couple clips just to hold them in place until I get started. So now you're going to take and you're going to sew across at the seam allowance. One of the things that I tend to do is I put my first seam allowance, and then just a little bit on the inside of that, I will do another row just to reinforce these corners. Don't be afraid to smush the bag as you need to. I just did 2 stitchings down the side just to make sure that my corners are reinforced. I don't want someone to get this bag or me to use this bag and then it turns around and comes undone. It's not how you want to present your hard work. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Start out with your allotted seam allowance. Now we can turn this bag right side out. This is where I love wax canvas because the more I play with it and the more I work with it, the more distressed it gets. As you can see, so we're starting to get that nice distressed look. But look at these corners. This is the perfect corners. You get that nice boxy look, and then look at that, you got your nice bottom that's reinforced. Okay. Once we finish getting everything together, that will sit really nice. Okay, so now let's go ahead and prepare the D-rings. Your D-rings are pattern piece G. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue down since I cannot iron. Same on the other one. I just placed an Amazon order and still forgot to order a new bottle of glue. Okay, so we're using 1.5 inch D-rings. Again, I use rainbow just because it's kind of my thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this. Now you could fold this again. I prefer to make sure it's like pretty. If you do it, I feel like if you fold it one more time, you're gonna get your D-rings are gonna just kind of shift and turn as you're using it. So all I'm gonna do now is I'm going to go down each side after I finish preparing this one and sew them. So I'm gonna get this one ready. Okay. do all 4 sides if you want. It doesn't matter because you're going to be folding these anyways. Okay, so that's what the first one looks like. Let's go ahead and do the next one. And then just go ahead and put your D-rings on it. Make sure the flat part is where the seams are. You don't want the people to see that part. And just fold them in half. And then I'm just going to stitch down at about 1/4 inch just to hold them together before we start installing them. For these, I usually just do 2 rows again, but I do the 2 rows on top of each other. See, I just did them right on top of each other, just to reinforce them a little bit. Perfect. So our D-rings are ready. And I'll be right back with the next step. Okay, now that we have our D-rings ready, now let's install them on our bag. So you have the pattern, so when you look at the pattern, it'll tell you how much you should have poking out. So just make sure you're lining them and centering them up by the seam. I like to clip them in place so that way when I transition to my sewing machine, they do not get they don't shift on me. And we're going to do the other side. Again, finding your seam that's open. And put them in place. So we're going to go ahead and sew these on with the seam allowance. And then we're going to start putting the lining together. So let me go ahead and just turn, you guys. I'm just going to move everything I need over so I don't have to get back up. Okay. So let me go ahead and adjust you guys again. Sorry. It's going to be so nice when my husband gets to set up the way I want it. Okay. So now that you're at your sewing machine, you're just going to go ahead and stitch across on both sides where the D-rings are. the same thing like I did at the base. I just stitched over the same line twice. I just want to make sure that we're good and strong. It is going to get stitched a couple more times, but that is just a little precaution that I like to take. And then you're going to go ahead and do the other side. Make sure your D-ring is out of the way so you don't sew over your D-ring. Your machine will not love you. Very well because I did not make sure my D-ring was out of the way. Perfect. So now our D-rings are attached and we're ready to start working on the lining. Let me just put, you don't need this one right now, so you can just put it away, out of the way. And now you need to grab your 2 pocket pieces, and they are letter I. You're gonna put right sides together. Make sure you watch your orientation, because if you don't, you'll be putting them on wrong like I did at the beginning. We don't wanna do that. So you're gonna sew down both the top and the sides and the bottom, but leaving a small opening to turn your pocket. When I first started sewing, I always forgot I would sew over my opening until I got to all done and be like, oh man, now I had to turn and rip those stitches. So make sure you leave a gap at the bottom. Sorry, that is my iron. I'm going to need to attach for the next step. Now you're just going to sew all the way around, making sure you leave that gap for turning. It's one of the reasons why I don't put the clips at the bottom, because that's a reminder to me that I need to leave my opening. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and clip your corners. It'll just make it nicer when you turn around to turn the back. Make sure you do not cut your seam. I interfaced one side. Some people like to interface both sides. It's just a slip pocket, and by the time I get it attached, we should be good. So take your time turning it out. Make sure you get your nice corners. I like to use my chopstick, which I didn't bring it over, but these are coming out pretty good. So getting your seams lined up nicely. Going to this corner here. I'm going to take it to my ironing to get a nice flat seam, but before I do that, I want to turn this opening so it'll be nice and pressed for when I top stitch. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go off camera to do this part really quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and top stitch over the seam where we want that nice edging for the slip pocket. Okay, so now you're going to want to grab one of piece H's, which is your interior lining. Again, make sure you're orientating it correctly. You want it not like this, you want it wide. Let's go ahead and mark all of our center points because we're going to need them. I tend to use my scissors and just clip a very small notch out of it. I'm going to do this on the top and bottom. And then I also do it on my pocket. Well, my top pocket I'll probably just fold instead of clipping into it. Okay. Grab my ruler. Okay. Now what you want to do is you're going to attach this 2 inches down from the top. Centering up my center lines. Again, everyone does this a little differently. Just use a small ruler and then line it up and make sure I am at the right distance everywhere. And then I'm going to pin these down. I don't know what this pattern is called on this fabric, but I'm loving it. I'm glad I ordered extra of it. Okay, so now that it's pinned down, all you're going to do is top stitch all the way around, and that's going to also close up this seam at the bottom. Okay. One of the nice things about this pocket is look how big that is. Could probably put even depending on the size of a tablet, you might even be able to put a tablet in there. So that's the first line side of the lining. Now we're going to prepare our zipper pocket for the other side. Okay, so now we're working on the zipper. We already have our tab on, we have our ends ready. So you take K and you split it in half, cut it in half the long ways, and then you're going to follow the pattern to fold your edges on all 4 sides in, And then we're also gonna fold it in half again. And we did that for both pieces, okay? So then what you're gonna do is we are going to put our zipper together. I'm gonna use some pins here to hold this, some clips. And I wanna just sandwich the one side of my zipper in each of the 2K pieces that we've made. You can use double-sided tape here. For someone who is especially if you're new and doing this, it'll help keep it from moving. I'm gonna put a couple on the end to hold them together. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, doing the exact same thing. So again, you're gonna sandwich that zipper. Clip it in place. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, following the seam allowance that's in your pattern, what we're going to do is gonna sew across. Well, I'm gonna come up, I'm gonna sew across, and then back down. That's just kind of gonna enclose that zipper really nicely in the facing. Just being careful to keep your zipper even as you're going down. It will shift. But just move it as you need to. Just to make sure it's nice and even. Actually, let me grab my owl to help here at the end. Just want to make sure that I keep this caught in the edges. Okay, and here we got the first side all connected. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Again, being very careful that you keep those even as you go. This gets to the point where some machines will have a hard time because that seam gets a little thick because you're going through the zipper and all those folded edges. Okay. So now your zipper is ready. So now we can start putting together our lining. Make sure you clean up your threads. Let's go ahead and grab our lining. You should already have your centers marked, but now I'm gonna go ahead and mark my center on my zipper face. I'm not gonna do triangles this time only because when I open it up, I got a nice little crease. So right sides together. Lining up those center points. You know what? Am I doing that correct? Let me just double check to make sure it's right sides together. Okay. Make sure your zippers are going the same direction. So line up your center marks, and then let's just go ahead and line up your facing on the first side. And then again, we're just basting this time. You're gonna baste this in place for now. Do the same thing on the other side. Again, lining up your center marks. And do the exact same thing. Just baste it on. So that's what you should look like. Because eventually you're going to turn this and attach it to the other part of the bag. Okay, we're good. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and line up our sides, and we're going to start putting it together. First, you only want to do the sides. Make sure when you're doing the other side where the zipper is that you tuck that out of the way because we don't want to catch the zipper. Because the zipper will allow us to have a nice large opening in our bag. That's why we leave that long tail. Sorry, my allergies are bothering me today, so I keep sniffing. Okay. So follow your seam allowance. You're going to start at the seam allowance the first, and then you're going to actually start out at the seam allowance, and then you're going to take your seam allowance a little bit larger according to the pattern. What that's going to do is just going to help your lining fit better in your bag. And then I just come back in to the original seam allowance. And you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, just like we did with the exterior, it's time to do our corners. So let's butterfly open our side seams. Helps us line up those corners and make them really nice. You can go to your iron and go ahead and iron these open if you would like. I'm just going to press them with my fingers at this point. Okay. So now you have your side seam and your bottom seam. So you're going to go ahead and come into your lining and you're going to pull these two seams together. And you should be able to feel them line up. And then I just like to put a couple clips in there to hold it in place as I'm getting ready to sew them. Again, use your seam allowance that's listed in the pattern. And I'm just going to go in here. I like to do 2 lines again, even though this is the lining. Just again, just allows me to make sure that my bag is sturdy. I don't want people to get a bag that'll come apart. Okay, so here you got your nice boxed corner. So now we'll come on the other side and do the exact same thing. Butterfly open our seams. There we go. Again, feel free to iron it if you would like. So I'm just going to now take and do the exact same thing on this side. Okay. Look at that. Your lining is now complete. Okay, now it's time to start putting the bag together. Let me gather everything I need and I'll be right back. Now comes the fun part. So now you need your exterior. Let's check something real quick. Okay, so with the lining piece that you just finished, make sure your zippers are all going in the same direction. We're gonna push our lining inside so it's right sides together. Okay. Make sure your D-rings are out of your way, tucked inside so they don't get okay. Now, what you want to do is when I start out by lining up my seams first, because then I know my bag will go together correctly. Oops, hold on a second. So my lining and my bag is on the inside, and now just lining up my side seams first. This is just going to ensure that my bag is nice and lined up. And then I'm just going to go around the whole bag and just pin the top, just so it's all nice and together. Okay, now what you're going to do is take it to your machine and you're going to use the seam allowance and you're going to stitch all the way around the bag. Don't be afraid to smush it around as you need to. Keep turning it as you need to. That's why you put all those extra clips in place. This is one of the reasons why I really like working with wax cabinets. It can move around quite easily, and it continues to give it that distressed look, which I enjoy in my bags. So we have the lining and the main part of the bag sewn together. I'll just get this out of my way. And I'm just going to go ahead and clean up my threads. Clearly I missed some earlier. Okay. Now we left the lining pocket open for this very reason, except for I made a mistake by not leaving my access to the zipper so I could open it, so I have to find it in the inside. Here we go. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is smush the bag and pull it out through your lining pockets. Pulling it all through. Okay. So I like to reach through that lining pocket and just get everything a nice good shaping as best as I can. Okay. Look how nice that bottom looks. Okay. So now what we're gonna do, let me just make sure this all looks right when we push this in. So now what'll this look like? Okay. Once I finish the stitching, because we're gonna top stitch too, this will all lay really nice. Okay. Before we do that though, I'm going to go ahead and close up my pocket. You can cut the extra off. I like to reinforce the bottom a little bit, so I just leave it and I just fold it up to meet the edge. And then let's go ahead and stitch that closed. Alright. And then you can go ahead and just push that pocket back in there. I like to make sure my corners are nice in there. Zip that up. Okay. Okay. So now what we're gonna do, let me just check my measurements. So, last step before we do the shoulder strap is we want to prepare this for top stitching. So I'm just getting my seams, and I'm going to put my zipper on the inside out of the way. Then I'm just going to make sure I pin everything, or clip, in my case I clip these, so when it goes So my top stitch, I get that really nice recessed zipper. Okay, so the zipper's on the inside out of the way, making sure that when you start zipping, you make sure your D-rings are up. You're just going to start and you're going to top stitch all the way around the bag. So I'm over by the D-ring, so I want to make sure that's flipped up and out of the way, just so I don't catch it. Again, for some sewing machines, if you're using wax keyless or vinyl, it might be a little difficult, but just take your time, it should be doable. Whenever I'm making bags, I always use the 1490 needle. Almost there. Okay. I just want to make sure everything's pushed in there nicely. Look at how nice and distressed that wax canvas is just from making the bag. It makes it really nice. It looks like it's well loved. Okay, so you can leave that sticking out if you want, or there is room. I like to just kind of push mine in for when I don't need it. But that is the main part of your Ember bag. Now let me show you how to do the crossbody strap. I'm not going to be able to do it completely because I still don't have my swivels. They'll be here today, but I can at least show you how to prep the strap. So I will be right back and I will get that ready to go. Okay, let's go ahead and make our strap. I'm using, you can use webbing, you can use it, make fabric and make it yourself. I'm using the guitar strap type. What I want to do before I get started is just melt the ends so they don't fray. I'm just going to grab my adjuster and I'm going to go up and down. Okay. And then usually here I like to just fold it over. If your machine can't handle it, you don't have to fold it over. I just like the way it looks. So I'm going to fold it over and then stitch this. Oh, why don't I put my adjuster on? fold this over. You can also do rivets here if you would like to. Or you can sew it and do rivets also, whatever you would prefer. I always, again, reinforce, so I put 2 rows of stitching on. You could also do a box. Okay. So I have larger ones, but I'm going to show you how to do this, and I can change mine later. These are 2s, so they're way too big. So what I want to do so I have my strap on. So then I'm going to come back up and then back down. So now I have my one end done. And then I'll take the other one. And I do just like I did with the adjuster. And I fold it under. I'm not going to sew these, but these to give you the idea. So then once you have those done, they will attach really nicely to your bag. And there you have it. It's adjustable and ready to go. Thank you for being patient today with me as I did my first video. I really appreciate it. I will be doing another pattern here within the next couple of days. It's a backpack. It was a really fun pattern, but I hope you will come back and check that out. Again, thank you for taking the time to check out Salty Works Design. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.